Hello, this is Heather. I'm sitting here today with Allan and Debbie Brown.
Hi.
Hi.
They are beekeepers and honey producers in Aurora, Colorado. So today we're going to learn what they do.
Great.
Okay, so tell me a bit about your interest in bees and why you became beekeepers.
Well, this all began with the search for a Christmas present for Allan one year. And I usually start thinking early in the year. And that summer, we had a big garden in our backyard. And he'd been kind of complaining for a couple of years that I'm seeing fewer and fewer bees and stuff like that. And, the wheels started turning and I started thinking about, wonder what I can do about that.
And in 2007, part of what motivated her was I was talking a lot about, how we couldn't even grow a cucumber anymore worth a darn. And I was reading in the news about this colony collapse and bees being in trouble. And the more that I commented on it, she thought, well, I had a real interest in the subject.
Tell me about the importance of bees.
Well, bees and flowering plants evolved together to cooperate with each other and take advantage of each other. Plants need to be pollinated to reproduce, and some plants chose this method of attracting insects or other pollinators in order to spread the pollen from one plant to another. And if they could entice insects like bees, that worked as a method of the plants having the ability to reproduce efficiently. So they're important for the environment, they're important to plants for the survival of the plants. And the plants are important for the survival of the bees. It all works together. Bees are also, for us people, important because they produce honey and wax. And lately they've become kind of an indicator species of the overall condition of the environment. When people look at how the decline of the bees or the monarch butterflies, it kind of tells people that the environment's changing and what are we doing to our environment. So that makes them important as well.
What are the health benefits of honey?
Honey is much more than just a sugar. Yes, it is the world's oldest sweetener, but it's a very complex product. There's over 600 compounds in honey, and it's got antibacterial properties, antiseptic properties, antioxidant properties, in addition to being a great nutrient. It's a lot more than just sugar. But honey has uses internally and also externally as for healing wounds. It's very valuable, burns especially. And different honeys have different properties, and different honeys have different benefits.
Okay, let's talk about honey production in Colorado. Can you tell me a little bit about various levels of size and scale?
Well, the majority of beekeepers in Colorado at this time are small-scale beekeepers. I would guess that there may be some 3,000 people across the state who have a beehive or two or three. And the vast majority of people are like that. They have one or two or three beehives in their yard or a neighbor's yard or someplace. If they live in an apartment, they got to find some other place. There are very few large producers at this time. The way that agriculture has changed in Colorado, there's not as much beekeeping as there was a long time ago.
Let's talk a bit about your honey.
Well, we call our honey Hive to Home.
And what is the size of your operation?
Right now we have
in the neighborhood of 30 beehives.
Yeah.
And it rises and falls with the season.
And how do you compare with large-scale production? Tell me what you do differently than, say, a commercial size beekeeping operation.
I think one thing we do is we intimately know every hive. Because we are so small, we can easily monitor the health of every single hive. We know how those bees are doing.
obviously, with a small operation, we don't have equipment like forklifts.
Yeah.
Uh, we're not doing it for the money. That's the first thing is we're not doing it for the money. So we don't have the same kind of profit and loss motive that comes from trying to do it to sustain itself, and to make a profit off of it. So we're also not moving our bees from place to place and exposing them to other people's bees.
Okay, let's talk about what it actually takes to be beekeepers and produce honey. Let's start with your needs.
Need number one is location. That's the very first thing that you have to consider is what is around where you're going to keep your bees. Because there has to be floral sources and there has to be flowers throughout the season. Second, the ordinance is involved because with urban beekeeping and suburban beekeeping, you've got to pay attention to what are the local rules. Can you do it or can you not? And homeowners association rules take precedence over city ordinances, and they tend to be quite restrictive. So once you got all that lined up, you have to have your equipment. So you got to buy the materials. You got to have protective clothing. It takes a certain tool set to work with bees. And then if you're so lucky as to get extra honey at the end of a season and your bees are still alive, then you're going to need to buy some bottles and jars and stuff like that. So where do we buy it? We buy some locally and we buy some from a variety of places across the USA.
So there's lots of different types of hives. Can you tell me about the types of hives that you manage and the differences in those hives?
Well, we have 3 types of hives that we manage. The majority of our hives are Langstroth hives, which is what most people think of when they think of a beehive. It's
a white box.
A big white box with another box on top of it. The other kind of hive that we have is called a horizontal top bar hive. And it's not as common when people think of a beehive, but it's becoming very, very common for backyard beekeepers. It's an easy type of hive to maintain and doesn't require as much equipment as the other types of hives. And that type of hive just has a top bar, hence the name top bar hive, and it does not have a frame, and the bees will build their comb down from the top bar without having any foundation to build on, so they can select their comb size and cell size and everything else. And the other type of hive that we have is called a Aurora hive, and a French style of hive, and it is a vertical top bar hive, and the original premise was that it sort of replicates the conditions inside of a hollow tree.
Tell me about hive management and how you manage hive health.
I do as little as possible at this point. The more we've read about beekeeping, the thing you want to do is maintain your equipment in good condition, and if you that'll do a lot for you. You've got to pay attention to their moisture levels and their ventilation levels inside, or they're going to catch illnesses. How you want to pay attention to their diet. A good, healthy diet for bees will help them keep a strong immune system. More and more, it's a matter of integrated pest management where you treat only as necessary or not treat at all.
I think the real critical thing is if you are making sure that your bees have good forage and ample forage, you're putting them in the best possible conditions.
Sometimes one thing that'll help a beehive is there are times when we do find it necessary to feed our bees for them to be in good health. or to increase their population or even maintain their population. There's times when there aren't any flowers out there, and there aren't any good nectar sources out there, and there aren't any good pollen sources out there.
Okay, well, let's move on to collecting and processing the honey. Can you talk about the steps that you have to take for that?
Well, when you're harvesting from a top bar hive, it's really easy. You just cut off combs and crush them, strain them, and bottle it. It's really no tech, low tech way of doing it, and you can do it as the bees are producing honeycombs. You can do it throughout the season. Whereas with the Langstroth hives, it's kind of, it all has to be sort of done at once because it is more involved.
So now you have your finished product. Where do you get your packaging needs from?
Where do you buy
I'm keeping it simple, mostly using mason jars. The majority of stuff is just available at the local hardware store or wherever you'd buy your canning supplies. I like to buy the lids because I don't like the regular mason jar lids that come in two pieces. It's got a ring and a flat piece. That's really inconvenient for honey, where you want to take the top off and put the top on, take it off again, because honey is sticky. So I like to buy these one-piece lids that are a whole lot easier to work with.
Let's talk about marketing a little bit.
Well, a lot of our honey is, as soon as somebody knows that you're a beekeeper, they want some of your honey. And just word of mouth sells a lot of honey. And we also sell a good amount of our honey at Denver Urban Homesteading, which is an indoor farmers market kind of thing. And they buy our honey at a wholesale price and then mark it up for themselves to sell.
A lot of honey goes during educational events.
Mm-hmm. With Delaney, where we have honey at the end of the year for the Delaney shareholders. And because of some of the changes, we're hoping this year to be able to offer shares of honey to Delaney shareholders.
Can you elaborate on the new shares that you're going to have available through Delaney?
Yeah, this is an idea that I've thought of for the last couple of years, and I know Delaney has been purchasing honey from a large honey operation on the western slope, and that's been wonderful. But since we are a small local CSA, I was thinking, well, maybe people would be interested in having not just their vegetables come locally, but maybe their honey be local as well. So we were thinking that throughout the season at Delaney, that we could, if someone bought a honey share, that they could get honey periodically throughout the entire season, and maybe in addition to that, there would be different packaging and things like that, and educate people on what they can do with their honey. And it's not just for in your tea and on your toast, that you can do a whole lot more with it.
Okay, well, let's talk about education. You are both educators for the beekeeping sector. Can you tell me about the classes you provide, where you provide them, and why you believe that bee education is important?
What we like to do is I like informal, on-the-job training type of workshops. So we would like to talk about how to start a beehive, and talk about the health of a beehive, and talk about answer people's questions. Is the real joy of this. The education part is to get out there with people who have questions and be a source of information for them and point them to where they can find more.
And the workshops that we do at Delaney Farm are perfect for that, because we can have these targeted workshops that just in a couple of hours, we're dealing with a short subject. We can go out in the field and we can see the different conditions, see the different types of hives, and questions develop as people are seeing what's out there.
Are you currently involved in any beekeeping or honey producer associations or clubs?
Oh, quite a few.
We're not in any honey producer associations. We don't, because we're not commercial. So we're not in any kind of commercial association. We're just in social associations.
I'd love to hear some final thoughts on why you believe people should support local beekeeping activities and purchase local honey.
Well, I didn't even know it until we became beekeepers. But there's bees out there. And if you have bees and you don't want bees, it's nice to have somebody to call and get rid of your bees. If you have a swarm of bees in your yard or taking up occupation in the wall of your house, if all beekeeping is illegal, then you're going to have difficulty finding anybody but a pest removal to help you out. Local beekeeping is important because it supports the whole health of a neighborhood. When we started keeping bees, the people around us who hadn't had, there's people all over our neighborhood who have peach trees and apple trees, and we noticed a huge difference between the year before we started beekeeping and the year after we started beekeeping. It made a huge difference in people's yards. I think that even the flowers respond to having more bees in the neighborhood. And I think that the flowers and the trees themselves respond, and they're more healthy as a result. So beekeeping is good for your local environment in a number of ways. It also increases environmental awareness. When you've got somebody down the street from you, whether they're keeping a chicken or a goat or whatever, it makes you think about where you're living, and it's not just a yard. It's not just grass out there. You're supporting your environment. And people should support buying local honey because local is good. It does turn out that there is a difference between honey that came from where you live and honey that came from far away. Even the taste is different, and the contents are different, and the pollen that is in raw honey, some people believe that it helps with your allergies. It's good. It's just good to support local food.
I'd really like to thank both of you for your time and for your information, and really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for coming, Heather.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Thank you